What's going on, everybody? So, yes, as of right now, the Chargers are 4-2. They're on their bye week, but there are some holes left in the roster that I think I can fill with a couple of trades that they can make. A couple of guys that are either not as high on the team's priority right now. They could be considered second, third stringers, even fourth. But I just think a lot of these guys that I've chosen, you don't even have to give up another player if they don't want to. But if you just give up like a pretty nice draft pick within the next year or two, I think you could get any of these players. So let's get into the list real quick to try to help out these Chargers in certain areas. And to start off, I wanted to go with a wide receiver just because I don't know if it's Keenan Allen, like if his health is, I don't know if it's health, but something is declining in him, whether it's his ability to run routes or get open or something like that as speed, but it's definitely very, very obvious this year. And it's pretty obvious too that Mike Williams is a player that the Chargers are most likely going to have to pay pretty soon. So I think this guy could be some type of insurance in case you end up losing Mike Williams, but also having a guy who could be just as good, if not better, than Keenan Allen at this moment. It's a guy who's pretty unappreciated, doesn't get a lot of recognition unless you're playing like fantasy football and stuff. He's a pretty well-known dude, but wide receiver from the Cincinnati Bengals and Tyler Boyd is definitely a guy who, like I said, is underappreciated. As of right now, he is third string and in the slot because T. Higgins, a rookie that Cincinnati drafted recently, is like their number 2 outside. And then also Jamar Chase, who they drafted number 5 overall, has just been dominating. So this guy is definitely being left out of the picture, especially when it comes to stats. And to be able to make a play on this guy, even if you give up a mid-level draft pick, I could say the highest you could go is probably a 4th rounder. But even throwing in like another receiver, another type of player to entice them could be a pretty easy trade in my opinion. But definitely one of the top guys, I would say. And a lot of these guys too, I don't know their contracts, but pretty sure the Chargers can make room because they have about 10 million or so right now to play with, and then they could also move other guys around as well. But another guy they could look at is a safety, and Marcus Maye from the Jets. He isn't playing right now. I believe he's on IR because of some type of injury, but even before that, he was kind of not really doing good with the organization because he had a DUI, and I think he was suspended for that as well. So I just think his time there is up. He doesn't want to be there really. But the thing is, he did sign a pretty big contract, I believe, recently, so that might be a harder trade, but he is definitely a very solid safety to put back there with a guy like Derwin James and Nasir Adderley. So we'll see how that goes, but definitely would be awesome to get Maye on the team. Then a running back. Yes, the Chargers have pretty good, solid running backs, even going to the 3rd string Larry Roundtree, even 4th and Joe Kelly. A lot of people like him, especially in the organization, but I think even giving up like a Justin Jackson or one of those other guys for a guy like this could be more beneficial for you, especially behind Austin Eckler, and maybe even using both at the same time. But a guy who's very underappreciated out there in Philly is Miles Sanders, the running back. I don't know what it is, if the new coach doesn't like him, doesn't like using him a lot, running the ball with him. At times it seems like Kenneth Gainwell, the rookie running back, is getting more playing time than him or more rushing attempts. And I just think Miles Sanders needs a change of scenery, and why not come down to LA from Philly? It'd be a nice thing. Definitely would be a nice 1-2 punch combo for the Chargers at running back with Eckler as well. I just think they got to be able to do it. So, and a lot of these teams too, I forgot to mention, they are on the bottom level of like the NFL. So, especially record wise. So I think these teams are a little bit more desperate in order to make a move and move on from certain players in order to get like draft picks or another player they're interested in. So these are definitely teams that are like with 0 wins or one or 2 wins on the season. So this is also why I think these trades are more possible, but let's just keep going. So yes, tackle Cam Robinson from the Jacksonville Jaguars is an interesting prospect. He was coming out of Alabama, really ranked high. I think he was picked in a couple later rounds, but he was supposed to get a big contract, and I believe they just franchise tagged him, so they weren't able to make out a deal. Yeah, you only get him supposedly for this year, but if he does play well for you on the right side, because you won't have to have him play on the left side because Rashawn Slater's there, and you could give up like one of your guys like Trey Pipkins that you're waiting for forever to see what he can do on the offensive line, give him to Jacksonville and another, 4th or 5th round pick, and you should be able to get a guy like Cam Robinson, and maybe if everything goes well, you can sign him to a nice deal in the next offseason and keep him around for a lot longer. So I think he's definitely one of the better offensive linemen you could get. Then tight end Evan Ingram from the New York Giants. He's one of these guys where his rookie year he was great, especially with his stats, even especially fantasy football wise, but especially the past couple, like 2 to 3 years, I think he's been like almost a no-show. And there's a lot of times where the guys around him, whether it's wide receivers, running backs, are gone, especially like the last couple weeks, and he still looks like the invisible man out there. They can't get him the ball. He's not making enough plays. I don't think it's him. I think it's just situation, coaching wise, play calling wise, and I don't think he really wants to be there anymore. So come down to LA. I think him working, being the next guy up after Jared Cook after this year, working with guys like Steven Anderson and all that, the other younger tight ends on the roster for the Chargers. They might have to give up one of those young guys too, but Evan Ingram is definitely a definitely better prospect in my opinion than those other guys were, because I believe he was selected in the 1st round by the Giants. So a lot of athleticism to work with at the tight end spot. And Justin Herbert likes to throw down the field to big receivers, and that's a big receiver right there. Then another running back who isn't in the greatest situation right now and looks like he's kind of in the doghouse, but barely gets a couple rushes here and there, catches, is Ronald Jones II in Tampa Bay. I believe, yeah, it just sucks because that offense is like he missed a block here or there in the first couple weeks, and now he's not really playing. But yes, it's just a bad spot because Leonard Fournette, who was a top draft pick and who is ahead of him as of right now, is playing really well. So I think they would be willing to move off of him. Plus they like other type of 3rd down catching running backs like a Justin Jackson, like a Larry Roundtree, something like that. So you could trade one of those guys and a draft pick as well, most likely a 5th, and then be able to get a guy like Ronald Jones coming to LA might bump up his enthusiasm for playing, and then being a backup to Austin Eckler might be really good for him. So we'll see what that will do. But yes, looking forward to that as well. Then and an ex-USC guy too, which isn't bad at all. And then there's a defensive back who I really liked, especially in college, from Michigan, but it's been a while. He's been on 2 teams, I believe, so far. It's Cleveland, who drafted him, and then now with the Giants, who he got traded to. And he's been pretty solid. He's a returner, plays defense, safety, or corner sometimes. Jabril Peppers. Say that name fast 5 times. But yes, he's definitely was one of the more talented guys coming out of his draft class. Slipped a little bit because of some inconsistencies, but I think he's been a pretty consistent player, especially on the defensive side as of right now in his career. And I think adding a versatile guy like that in Brandon Staley's defense is just crazy. You could almost have a smaller version of a Derwin James, in my opinion, and having those 2 guys on the same defensive field for any team, that would be pretty awesome, especially when it comes to the playoffs. And then another cornerback they should be looking to is a younger guy. I think he's only in his 2nd year, but it's Cameron Dantzler of the Minnesota Vikings. He was a 1st rounder. I believe he's out of Mississippi State. And I liked him too coming out, but he did pretty good his 1st year. And then I guess just because of free agent signings and other guys that they think are better than him as of right now, he's been relegated to like special teams and a backup role. So I think you could be able to get him for a pretty nice price, especially if you add in an extra player or 2. Be able to not have such a high draft pick when you send towards him. But Yeah, I think he has enough talent to be able to play on this Chargers roster and be able to help them not only depth-wise, but maybe even starting if they needed him to. Another wide receiver who can spread the field, especially downfield, is in Miami, Devontae Parker. He is a guy who's probably considered their second or maybe their number one guy, but stats-wise, it doesn't seem like it because Jalen Waddle, the first round pick that they got out of Alabama, looks pretty much like he's going to be their number one of the future. And then they still have guys like Preston Williams, Will Fuller, guys who probably aren't staying healthy, but even with Parker being healthy, his stats don't look like they're looking his way anyway. So why not put him on a team that could use him, especially as a deep field threat. So definitely like a possibility of him joining our offense. Then another guy who's kind of a little bit off the radar, but liked his talent in college and haven't really heard much about him because I think it's just the way his team is out there in Detroit. But Austin Bryant, the defensive end / offensive linebacker, he was really talented player at Clemson, got picked pretty high in the draft. But I just haven't been able to see him get on the field for some reason. I don't know if it's scheme or just a new coaching coming in, but I think he's one of those talented guys, especially those type of hybrid players that if you get on Brandon Staley's defense, then he could excel and propel his career a lot further. So this guy could definitely be a steal, but you might have to give a little bit more in the draft to get him, in my opinion. And another running back who, I don't know, he's had one good game pretty much this year, stats-wise, and then other than that, everybody thought he was going to be their true number one running back, and he never really panned out. And that's Myles Gaskin of the Miami Dolphins. And he had a great year last year when he came in. He was a second string, third string, but when he went in for the first guys, he did very well. So everyone just assumed with those guys gone and the other type of guys they have on the bench, he was going to be the main focal point, and really he hasn't, which sucks because it seems like he does have a lot of talent and they just don't use him properly, or they overthrow him, or they don't block well enough for him. It's just pretty crazy. So I think him being in a number two role behind Austin Eckler and, you know, coming in, spelling him at times, but showing what he could do with that type of burst, I think could help out the Chargers, especially when it comes to the playoffs as well. Then another first round wide receiver who a lot of people are pretty much down on, pretty much around everywhere, but especially it seems like in New England because doesn't get a lot of publicity out there anymore, but seems like he's healthy, seems like he's been playing, but stats wise, once again, hasn't really been producing. And he's been a guy that I think they have been trying to get rid of for a couple years now, and that's N'Keal Harry. He was really awesome because I'm a USC fan, so I had to play against him at least once a year at ASU and know how good of a player he is, and he just killed us a bunch of times. But for some reason, he just hasn't been the same out there, even when Tom Brady was his quarterback. But a guy who's that big can spread the field and, you know, is overlooked like that, kind of like how Mike Williams was the first bit of the year. I think he can benefit from playing in the Chargers offense and Joe Lombardi's offense as well. Then another cornerback or defensive back, I forget if he plays safety or not, but Darnay Holmes of the Giants. He was one of those guys who was later drafted, but has become one of the better players. But because they have so many players out there, including Peppers, in that cornerback, defensive back area, I think they're willing to give up at least one of these guys. So be able to get one of them is good, and Darnay Holmes is a guy who I think is more gettable than, say, a guy like a Dory Jackson or a Breeland. So definitely has a lot of talent from UCLA, so I know how good he is. And yeah, definitely it would be an upgrade in Brandon Staley's defense. Last two guys are from the Jets. We'll go first to wide receiver. Denzel Mims, one of these guys had a Baylor who was great at Baylor, had great numbers, ran down the field, caught long passes and everything, but for some reason cannot do it in the NFL. But I don't think that's more because of his physical ability. It's more of the ability of the crappier players around him, not giving him enough time, whether it's offensive line or, you know, other standout players like other receivers or running backs as well. He finally has what's supposed to be a good quarterback, and even that guy struggling as well. But definitely a guy, a bigger body type, and a guy who has enough speed to stretch the field that I think will be very good for the Chargers. And then the last guy is a linebacker, Blake Cashman from the Jets. As I mentioned, he was a pretty good linebacker from Minnesota. I forget if it's like a year or two now when he was drafted, but he was rarely one of the more consistent linebackers in college, and he's been doing very well for them as well since he's gotten the time to start. So I think adding some more linebacker help, especially since Drew Tranquill looks like he might be missing a bit of time as well with his weird injury. They say it's a pec, and then somehow it's dealing with his back as well. So can never trust that. Need to get a little bit of youth out there just in case to help out with your depth at the linebacker spot. So yes, those are my handful of guys that I think can change the Chargers roster, whether it's offense or defense. Nice little spark. I know Tom Telesco, for some reason, never likes to make trades during the season. He more trades away players for draft picks. Recently traded Desmond King to Tennessee for a draft pick, traded a wide receiver to Chicago for a draft pick, but never really for any other player, which is kind of weird. So hopefully he does end up waking up and doing one of these, you know, things before there starts to be more mounting up injuries for them. Yes, they're on a bye week right now, but it's a perfect time to do your homework and make your decision within the next couple weeks. So early November, I believe, is when the trade deadline is. So thanks for watching, people. Like and subscribe. Comment down below. Let me know what y'all think. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.